Hello, welcome to this Technocamps tutorial on Adobe Animate. This is part 3 of our road safety animation tutorial. Now in parts 1 and 2 we started creating our road safety animation, so we'll just look at a quick example of what we've done. So part 1 we created the title scene with the title scrolling up the stage. Part 2 we created a traffic lights animation with a car approaching a set of traffic lights, stopping, waiting for the lights to turn green, and then moving away. Now in this part 3, we will create the subtitle to introduce the next scene, and this subtitle will contain text and shapes morphing into each other. So we'll show an example of what we're aiming to create. So some information, some images and text morphing into text, and then that text morphing into another image. Okay, so we're going to show we can create this kind of effect in Animate. Now let's look at a quick example of a storyboard you could create in preparation and planning for this animation. So we're showing the scenes, we're showing the phases of the animation. Part 1, we've got the images that we create in Animate with some text, and we describe how we can make these using different shapes and lines, and we're saying that it's going to last for about 3 seconds. And with the text we're going to need to be breaking it apart to form it into a shape. And then this is going to morph for 5 seconds into this text, just giving information to the viewer, which will morph then into this image to end this animation. Now be warned doing something like this, that if you create a complicated image like this with lots of different parts, lots of different shapes making up the full image, then it can slow down the process of the morphing effect for the animation. So in the example we're going to do here, instead of drawing this lollipop person with the stick, we're just going to draw the lollipop stick. Okay, so that's just to avoid having that process slowing down. Now let's start the animation. So you need to open up your road safety animation. However, if you haven't done parts 1 and 2, you can still follow this tutorial to complete part 3. They're not dependent of each other. Okay, so let's start off creating a new scene. So make sure you got the scene window open, so window, scene. So click the scene window. There's our 2 scenes, title and traffic lights. And we're going to add a new scene. And we'll call it subheading. If you want to think of a better name, that's fine. And we click enter. So let's name our layer. Just call it subheading also. And let's create our images. Now in the bottom left corner here, we had a set of traffic lights. So if you followed part 2 of the tutorial, you could go to the traffic light scene and copy this set of traffic lights. But just in case you haven't, we'll go through creating a set of traffic lights. So if you want to follow this bit, you can. If not, and you just want to copy from part 2, then that's fine. So we'll use the rectangle tool and go to properties, and we'll choose fill color black and stroke color blank. So we'll draw a rectangle for the traffic lights for the main body, and then we'll draw a rectangle for the pole that it stands on. And let's align it in the center. So Control Alt 2 and Control Alt 2, and then we'll lower them to meet each other using the arrow keys on the keyboard. Okay, so that's great for the body. Now I'm going to add in my circles with the oval tool for the lights. So let's do green. I'm holding down Shift as I draw. Now let me see if that's okay. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that should fit well. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. So hold down Alt and drag, and hold hold down Alt and drag again. Okay, so there's our 3 lights. I'll move that up slightly. Okay, so select all 3, and then we're going to go to Align, and we don't want to align these to the stage now because I want to distribute them. So I'm going to align them to each other, and I'm going to distribute vertical center. That didn't make much change actually, so I think we'd got them fairly well distributed. Okay, so this is going to be our amber, and then the bottom one is our red. And then I'll take the light, the body, and I'll align it in the center, Control Alt 2, and then I'll do the same to the lights. Highlight them all, Control Alt 2, and there we go, we got that lined up nicely. Okay, so there's the set of traffic lights. I'm going to bring it over here to the bottom left corner and line it up there. Now next, we're going to draw a road going from the top right corner down to about the center here. Okay, so we're going to use a rectangle. And I'll recolor it to be grey. I could have done that before, but... Okay, so we're going to be using the free transform tool to rotate this, but let's draw the lines first. So I'll use the line tool, and I'm going to draw the lines a light grey. Now, when I've drawn the lines, I've already got them dotted, but let me just show you what you might have had. So, if the style of your line is just a solid line, and the stroke we can make about 1. Okay, so we chose the stroke color as light grey, and then change the style to this dashed. Okay, and that'll give us the dashed lines that we can place in the center of the road. Make it a little bit thicker. Go thicker again. And 1 more. Now I don't want them too thick, because as you can see, the thicker I get, the closer the dashed lines get together. So I'm going to reduce that thickness a little bit actually. Let's go with 4. And there's my line. Okay, so I'm going to hold down select the road, Control Alt 2 to center a line, and do the same to this line, Control Alt 2. Now I drew that quite accurate in terms of matching length, so that's great. So now I'm going to double click the road to select all of it. Use the free transform tool to rotate it. And I want it to come from the corner there down to about the center here. So I'm going to need to rotate it a bit more. And let's extend it. Okay, and now you can zoom out a bit. So now you can then rotate it as you want. So I'm going to angle it a bit more. And again, like in previous tutorials, it doesn't matter if it overlaps the edge of the stage. If it does and you don't like it, you can always select the parts that overlap the edge and delete them. Okay, there you go, so there's the road. And then the final part, the final image we had on this first part of the animation was the text. Okay, so I'll choose the text tool and we're going to say cross the road at Pelican or Puffin crossings. So let's change the color for a second to be able to see it. Okay, so there's our text. Let's edit it a bit. So what font should we go for? Okay, so under the object properties window, you can choose your font. Okay, that one looks alright. Berlin Sans FB. Okay, I'm going to take it over here. And now we're going to change the color. So select the text with the selection tool. And we'll go to the fill and I'll go for a blue. And then change some of the coloring of the different words. So we'll change the color of pelican and puffin. So double click to select the text. Double click on pelican to select it. And we'll go for an orange. And then the same for puffin. And we'll go for a different color. We'll have a pink. Okay, so there's my message, cross the road at pelican or puffin crossings. And I want a diagonal here, so we're going to use the free transform tool and rotate it. Okay, so there you go, that's looking okay there. Now there's our first part of this animation complete. But this is not a shape, this is text. So the traffic lights are a shape, the road is a shape, this is text. So we need to select it and we need to break it apart twice to turn it into shapes. So I'm going to right click, break apart. That turns it into the separate letters. Right click again, break apart again, and now we've got the text as shapes. Okay, so that's ready to morph with the shape tween. If we'd left it as text, the shape tween wouldn't work on it. Okay, so before we move on, let's just add a background color. So we'll lock that layer, the subheading layer. We'll add a new layer, background. And on the background layer, with the rectangle tool, we'll draw a background. Now, as always, you can choose whatever background you want, the color, or you can put different images or text. It's up to you. But we're going to go for a pale background. So that, there, let's choose the pale pink. Yeah, that looks okay. In terms of choosing good contrasting colors, maybe this pink on top of this light pink isn't great. Okay, so I'll see if I can make this pink word of puffin a bit darker. But I'm happy with that as the background color, so I'll lock that layer and go back into the subheading layer on puffin. So I select this time now, because it's not a shape, because it's not text anymore, I'm going to have to select the letters individually whilst holding down shift. And we'll go for a slightly darker pink. Okay, there you go, so it stands out a bit better. It looked okay as it was, but if you just want to consider the contrast of colors, we could do something like that. Okay, so that's done now, the first part. Now, if you remember on the plan, we had this first set of images lasting on the screen for 3 seconds. So we'll extend out to 3 seconds on the timeline, and we'll add a keyframe, so F6 at 3 seconds. And I'm going to add a frame on the background layer, F5, just so it stays up to our length. Now, at 3 seconds, the images start morphing into the text. And if you remember, we planned it out so that it would last 5 seconds. So I'm going to add, so we're on 3 seconds here. So we'll extend out to 8 seconds. And that's where we'll have our text. So I'm going to add a blank keyframe at 8 seconds, F7. Okay, that contains nothing. Now, from 3 seconds out to 8 seconds is going to be our morph animation. That's going to be our shape tween. Okay, so I'm going to add a frame to the background. Okay, now on the subheading layer, we're going to add some text that again we're going to need to break down into shapes. So my text is going to give a message, so let's choose the text tool and we'll say you can also cross the road with help from a lollipop person. ... to show we're going to lead on to something. Now I want this quite big, I want it to be dominating the screen, and I'm going to choose a different font. So have a look, choose the font you like. Okay, I like that one. But I want the text a lot bigger than this, so I'm going to increase the size. But when we increase the size, as you can see, we're going to go off the side of the stage. So we're going to need to double click into the text and make some new lines. Okay, so I'll try that. So I pressed return where I wanted the new lines, free transform, and I'm holding down shift as I'm dragging. So actually I'm going to line this in the center. So Control Alt 2 and 5, hold down shift and drag it to be larger. Now as I've made the text larger, I'm feeling like I want to change that font. Okay, so I'll select it and try something else, Franklin Gothic. Yeah, I'm happy with that, that looks okay. I think I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and then align it center again, Control Alt 2 and 5. Okay. Now let's change the text up a bit and add some more color. So I'm going to double click the text to be able to edit the text, and I'm going to make every other word a different color. So I'll keep black and I'll also use red. So start with red, then black, then red, then black, and so on. Now obviously you can choose your own pattern. You can choose different colors. You could change the letters individually, entirely up to you. Or if you just want to keep it all the same color, that's fine. Okay, so there it is, I'm happy with that. You can also cross the road with help from a lollipop person. Now, because we're going to apply a shape tween, this is going to need to be a shape. So we'll select it, right click, break apart, twice. So now we've got these individual letters as shapes. Now this is going to be staying on the screen for 3 seconds. So from 8 seconds we'll extend out 3, so we'll go up to 11. And I'll add a keyframe, F6. And I'll add a frame to the background layer, F5, to keep it the same length. Okay, now that we've got our first 2 sets of images, let's apply our shape tween to see how the animation looks. So frame 1 is the first image. The frame at 3 seconds, so 72, is the second image. Sorry, is the first image and where it starts morphing into the second image. So in between the second and third keyframes, so here, I'm going to right click and create a shape tween. Now let's see how this looks. So this stays for 3 seconds. Then we start morphing. Now as you can see, it's moving a little bit slowly, so maybe I've been a bit complicated and put too many images. So that's something you need to be considering. Okay, maybe you want to reduce the amount of images you're drawing, because if somebody's watching this animation, it's going to be looking too slow. It can also have to do with the processing of your computer. So maybe if you've got a lot of stuff going on your computer, it might make your animation like this quite slow. Okay, so just a couple of things to keep in mind and think about when you are creating a morph effect like this with lots of different parts morphing together. Okay. Now the animation is slow on the timeline. We had that problem with the processing. So let's see how it looks when we test the movie top right. But remember, in the scene window, we've got title, first, and traffic lights. Now I don't want to watch all that before I can test the movie, the animation. So I'm going to reorder. So drag the subheading first, and then I can rearrange that later on easily. So play. Okay, so there's our first images. Now, as you can see, when we're playing here, it's a lot smoother. It looks a lot better. So we haven't got that lagging and the slowness coming. Yeah, okay. So I'm actually happy with that, and I don't feel like I need to make changes. Okay, great. So let's go back. I'll leave the scenes as they are for now because I'm going to be testing the movie again. So, okay, so we've got our text here staying on the screen for 3 seconds. Now it's going to take 5 seconds again to morph. So from 11 seconds, we'll extend out to 16. And this is where we'll add a blank keyframe. So F7. And I'll add a frame to my background layer, F5. And now on this keyframe here at 16 seconds, we're going to draw a new image. Now on the plan, as you saw, we had the lollipop person holding the stick. But I think that's going to be a bit too complicated and cause my animation to slow down with all those different parts. Okay, as you saw, it got quite slow on the timeline with just the first set of images we drew morphing into the text. So imagine drawing a person with all those different parts, because you'll have to draw each part separately. So all those different shapes is going to take quite a bit of processing power to morph. So let's make it a bit more simple, and as we said, just draw the lollipop stick. So we'll draw the lollipop bit first, so we'll use the oval tool. And I'll go for a red for the outline, and then we'll have a yellow center with some black text on it, so no stroke. So draw my circle and hold down Shift. I'm going to center align it, Control Alt 2, and drag it up. Now I'm going to hold down Alt and copy it, so drag it down. Oh, I messed that up. So hold down Alt, drag and copy. There we go. I left go of Alt before I dropped the shape. Okay, so this is going to be yellow, so we'll change that color and we'll reduce the size. Now let's see how they look together. So let's take the line one, align it in the middle, Control Alt 2 and 5. Now the yellow one, Control Alt 2 and 5. And as you can see, I made a mistake there and I've taken off part of the shape. So undo. So I'll Control Alt 5 it first to move it down into line, and then Control Alt 2 to put it right in the center. Right, that's a little bit small, I think. So because it's already overlapping the red, it doesn't matter if I delete bits behind it for making it bigger. So hold down Shift and increase the size of it. Now I've made a mistake and made it too big, so let's select it again and make it a little bit smaller. Okay, let's see how that looks. So you can see we've got a gap there. So let's use the paint bucket tool and fill that with red. And okay, I'm happy with that, with the size of it. Okay, so let's take a line, let's draw a black line to go underneath the text, and I want it to be a solid line. So it's going to be about here. Okay, so I'll just draw that to the side. Now we'll use the text tool, and we're going to write the word stop, and I'm going to make it black. Now with the text, it doesn't matter if I overlap the shapes because the text isn't a shape yet, it's not going to affect it. So I'm going to Control Alt 2 and 5 to center align it, and then use my arrows to take it up a bit. Now let's see how this line looks. Okay, so that text is okay. Make it slightly bigger. Okay, now the line. So I'm actually going to take it down below the circles and Control Alt 2 to align it in the center, and then I'm going to, sorry, not Control Alt 5, I'm going to use my arrow keys to move it up and choose where to put it. So there, and I'm going to move the text down. Okay, so that's looking good. Now, as you can see, when I move the line, it doesn't affect the shape below it. So that's good because I can keep moving the line. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that alignment. So let's select all of that and move it up. And now let's draw the pole to go with it. Now let's draw the stick. I'll use the rectangle tool. We'll have it filled with black with no stroke. And I'm just going to draw it to the side so that it's not overlapping the shape and interfering with the shape. Okay, is that thick enough? Yeah, that looks okay. So I'm going to undo that. Now it's long enough so that it goes behind the sign and off the bottom of the stage. So to make my order of the shapes correct, so to make this lollipop overlap the stick, I'm going to take the lollipop over to the left. I'm going to select the stick and Control Alt 2 to align it in the center. Then select all of the lollipop and the text, Control Alt 2, align it in the center so that it overlaps the stick. Now, as you can see, I moved that and I forgot to select the text. Okay, I'm happy with that. Looks good to me. So there's one more thing we need to do. So these are all shapes except for the text. So let's click the text and we'll break it apart. So again, we can right click, break apart, or you could click Control B and that breaks it apart. And now it is a shape. So if I were to select the O and move it, as you can see, it'll take out the bit below it. Now our final image is complete. So this is going to stay on the screen for 3 seconds. So let's go down to 16 seconds and extend out 3 seconds up to 19. And add a keyframe there, F6, and a frame on the background layer, F5. And now let's create the morph from the text to the lollipop stick. Okay, so a text came on the screen at 8 seconds, stays on the screen until 11 seconds, and now between 11 seconds and 16 is where we need to add this shape tween. So between 11 seconds and 16 seconds, right click, create shape tween, and as you can see it starts to morph. If I turn on an in-skin in, you can see a bit more of what's to come and what's gone. But be aware, if you are turning on an in-skin in with lots of shapes like this, again, it can slow down the process of what you're doing. So it might not be such a good idea. So it wasn't a good idea for me. It slowed me down and made me wait, so I'm going to turn it off. Okay, so let's have a look. So we go up to 16 seconds, where we've got the lollipop stick appearing, and then that stays on the screen for 3. Okay, so let's play it and have a look. Now, if you remember, it didn't play very well on the timeline, so because I've reordered the scenes, I'm going to test my movie top right. because it played better when we tested the movie. Okay, so there's the morph from the images into the text. So we're taking the traffic lights on the road and morph it into this message. You can also cross the road with help from a lollipop person, which morphs into a lollipop stick. Excellent. So that is this animation completed. Let's lock the subheading layer. The background layer is locked. And we need to reorder the scenes, remember. So let's go to scene and bring subheading down to the third order. So title, then traffic lights, and subheading. And I'm going to test the movie now to see how it looks with all three together. So title to introduce, B road safe, traffic lights animation, and then into this morphing. Cross the road at the Pelican or Puffin crossing. You can also cross the road with help from a lollipop person into the lollipop stick. So that's looking good all together. So that bit is completed. Now let's make sure we save our work. So we got the layers locked. We got the scene order back to as it should be. Let's go to File, Save. So make sure it's saved. And ready for the next part, for part 4 of our animation. Now thank you very much for following along with this Technocamps tutorial using Adobe Animate. We've completed part 3 of our road safety animation. Look out for part 4 where we'll be using the bone tool to create an animation of a lollipop person signaling to children to cross the road. Okay, so the bone tool will be the focus of that tutorial. So thank you for following along.